Hi, this session is about qualitative data analysis. So if you have completed your data collection through interviews or focus groups, or if you have completed the first set and you're interested in learning what the data has to offer you in order to plan for the follow-ups, this overview might be of help for you. Let's start with a reminder about what is special about the qualitative research data that we're working with. First off, it is not numbers, it is more of words and visuals. It might be visual images or visual recordings or maybe audio in some occasions, but it is more qualitative in nature, reflecting perceptions, insights about lived experiences, feelings, and whatnot. It tends to be associated with researcher involvement. I cannot say that I'm unbiased when I'm working with qualitative research data. It's highly involved and I am highly involved with it. And as I always say, as researchers, we are part of the instrument which comes with qualitative research data. The interview itself, the focus group itself, the observation, whatever data we're trying to collect, we are involved with it because it is seen through our lens and collected and compiled through our lens and through our own perception and experiences. It's mostly associated with small-scale studies. We're not talking usually about hundreds or even tens of interviews or data collection pieces. It is much smaller in scope. It might be inclusive of different formats. So in a particular research, I might have interviews, a few focus groups, and some visuals or artifacts of the participants that I can analyze. However, we're not talking about large-scale studies where we're talking about hundreds of participants. It mainly focuses on a holistic perspective from the positionality of the participants rather than just one question. It's not a one question, one answer. It is more holistic, looking at things from different perspectives that the participant brings forth. It's usually associated with data analysis while you are collecting the data. So the moment I start conducting my interviews, automatically I start my analysis process. Unless I am working with research assistants and they are conducting the interviews, they are starting the analysis process. I'm not, but eventually, realistically speaking, the moment I start collecting the data, the analysis starts. And that's why I said in the introduction to this session that you don't, even if you have collected a small number or the first set of your interviews, you can benefit from this. What about the process? What is entailed in it? First off, it's iterative. It is not a one-off task. Never expect that in a qualitative research, you'll collect your interviews, transcribe them, go through them, highlight and create themes and hand it over. It's a very iterative process which involves going back, looking at it from different lenses, deciding on what makes more sense for you as the researcher and for the readers later on. How can you organize it in a way that makes sense for both you and the reader? And for this, a very good analogy can be organizing your resources in your office. You might identify or categorize them based on topics, based on language. You might organize them based on courses, and then under each use a subcategory to organize them with. It depends. It depends on your personality, it depends on your experience, it depends on the material and the resources that you have at hand. And in addition, you might decide to organize it based on courses now, but later on, looking at it again, you might find that, the courses, that's not the best way. I'm going to go with topics. The same thing applies with research, qualitative data analysis. Do not expect that there is one correct way of analysis. There are multiple ways that you can organize your themes, or you can see your data, the same way that there are multiple ways for you to organize your office. The most important thing is that the process or the way that you are organizing them makes sense to you and can be clearly explained for others. Because when it comes to research findings, it's not only you who will use it. You're preparing it for others to read it and make sense of it. So it's similar to if your office is going to be shared with other individuals who need to make use of the resources. The clearer the organization is and the simpler the organization is, the better it is for those colleagues to benefit and make use of what you have in that office. The next thing is inductive. We're always going from the particulars to the general. I'm going from the actual words to higher, more abstract statements that are inclusive of more than one of those statements provided by the participants. And that applies again for the office. Your resources, you're looking at smaller pieces of documents, but then you're trying to come up and look at it with categories that are at a higher level. Then comes the research-centeredness, the researcher-centeredness. At no point can you look at qualitative data and say it is not related to your own perception, your own experience and identity. It's always highly related. Similar to organizing your office. Depending on your personality, you can go this way or that way. It is highly involved with what you bring to the process, and hence you need to be clearer in describing what you did so that the reader can understand better. We have different types of data analysis. The most prominent and common is thematic analysis. We usually identify the themes that come across through the interview data or the qualitative data. We are immersed in the data, and usually it's intuitive and fast because we already have some idea about what to expect, but there are some things that we don't expect. So we know the topic at hand. It's not totally new, and I'm not trying to come up with a theory or a framework. I'm trying to understand the nuances. So going into a research about technology integration in education, one of the themes that I expect to find, especially if that's part of my research question, is challenges faced in integration. Definitely, I do expect to have something about technical struggles or challenges. I identify them, and it's fast, intuitive, and I can apply it in different contexts. Content analysis is another form where I identify common themes. It's not just identifying the themes. I want to find what's common, and more importantly, I'd like to see how frequently each of these themes are reported so that I can get a sense of what's more common, what's more prominent, and what is higher priority among the individuals I'm working with. It's very practical and widely applicable. I can apply it not just to qualitative analysis of interview or focus group data. I might even apply it to content analysis of documents, where I might take policies and identify the common themes and highlight which is the most prominently presented or shared or reported. I have grounded analysis, which specifically relates to grounded theory, where I'm starting with an unbiased position. I want to have the data speak to me. I want to base all my themes from within the data, from the ground up, and it is characterized by continuous comparison between the themes I've identified so far and what I'm collecting more recently, because I want to reach the point where I say, okay, I've reached saturation. No more interview, like any extra interview from now on will not reveal any new theme for me. So there's always that iterative process. I have discourse analysis, which is very specific to language studies. It's not applicable in different contexts, but it's very important for linguistics, and it focuses on the communication and the language analysis and the discourse. And finally, at least within this overview, there is the narrative analysis that focuses on the story rather than the themes. If I'm talking about cultural ethnography, if I'm talking about a biography, if I'm talking about story based research phenomenology, for example, I'm not interested in pure themes. I'm not going to focus on the themes. I'm going to focus on the story and what makes it special and informative for others. Moving forward, I'll focus on thematic analysis, as it is the approach that we make use of in most of the research that we conduct at course level or small scale qualitative research projects. The question of why themes? Simply because it's easier to report and it's easier to understand. Imagine if our readers can have the time or access to read all the interviews, that's the perfect case for them to understand totally what we did and what the participants said. But that's not the objective. The objective of research is for me to conduct it and present it in a way that the reader can make sense of it, similar to me organizing the office and for other colleagues who can benefit from using it. That's why it's much easier to put them in categories, which in the research perspective is the themes. The types of themes are mainly two. I can have ordinary and expected themes and unexpected ones. For example, I'm working with technology integration, and automatically I may expect, when it comes to challenges of integrating technology in educational contexts, I might expect a theme that relates to technical issues. I might expect a theme that relates to pedagogical practices with implementing technology. But I might not expect that some participants might refer to challenges that relate to fear of being censored or misquoted in a particular online discussion forum, in a particular course. I didn't expect that. It might not come through or come across except once or twice in my interviews. And these are the ones that are usually harder to categorize. The ordinary and expected, it's very easy for me to organize, to identify and organize and label. However, when it comes to the unexpected ones, these are the ones that tend to make me stop and think, oh my God, where am I going to put this? Where does it fit? And why would it fit here and not there? Should I create a new theme for it or what? This is very similar to those final few documents in your office that you don't know which shelf to place on and which group to add them to. Now, if they are unimportant and not relevant to you, you might throw that document. But if it is important to what you are thinking of or focusing on in your research or in your office, you'd like to keep it. And sometimes we do in research exactly what we do in the office. We keep miscellaneous, and if somebody's going to use that office, we can say in the miscellaneous you'll find this, this and that, and that's why I kept them. In our theme analysis, if it is an important idea that relates to the question that I have and it helps answer it, then I'm not going to throw it. I will report it, but I might have to report it as a separate category and say it didn't show very frequently, but this is of extreme relevance and that's why I want to keep it and that's why I'm reporting it. The levels of themes, you can already think of the structure of the tree or the visual organizer or the concept map from which you can help your reader understand where the major themes are and what the sub-themes are. The sub-themes can be more than one level. It's not always two levels. Naming the themes, we need to think of names that are reflective of the data that we're working with. And that's why we need to be very sensitive with the data, and they need to be conceptually congruent. I cannot have a particular theme that has 4 different sub-levels while another theme only having 1. At least try to get that congruency with being around the 2 all across or 3 all across, or maybe if you have to report 1, which is, let's say, the miscellaneous at the end, or that fear or social anxiety, or anxiety with regards to with reference to the content that you are sharing, then maybe 1 can be 2 levels while the others are 3 or 4. But try to have congruency and conceptual congruency across. Qualitative data analysis, the process, the steps, we always start with data preparation, cleanup, transcription, making sure that it is correctly transcribed. We have the initial exploration, which starts with qualitative data, it starts from the moment you actually start those interviews with your participants. Because the moment you start talking with them, your mind starts exploring that data that they are providing. The analysis itself passes through a coding process. And this is not the only way that can be done, but this is a visual model that is presented by Cresswell in one of the most prominently and widely used textbooks for research. We always start with many pages or with many audio snippets. This is the initial read. We start with an initial read. Then we move to dividing the text into sections or segments. As we all know, when we're doing the interview or we're having a discussion, there is a lot of filler words or filler information that we might not need and might not be relevant to our topic. So I start by identifying those segments that are of relevance to my topic. I'll have many, but it is already less in number. And then I go through labeling those segments, 30 to 40 codes. So for example, when I'm talking about the technology integration challenges, I start highlighting the segments that relate to internet is very slow, the computer crashes, I have technical issues, electricity, if I'm in a location where electricity might be cut. So whatever it is, I start putting those labels for the segments. The other set might be making use of technology to engage the students, how to cover the curriculum in adequate time. So these would be pedagogical aspects, so on and so forth. But then I will look at my segments and find, oh, there are things that overlap. So for example, internet connectivity and computer crashing, those might fall under the same. So instead of 30 to 40 codes, I want to bring them together. I cut them down into 20, and eventually I want to collapse my codes into themes where it is the technical, pedagogical, and maybe the social anxiety or whatnot. Is this the only way? No. Do I have to have these iterations? No. But this is an idea of how we have to move from the many to the limited. Some individuals may be more skilled at finding these nuances, but each one of us can do it through the process that makes sense to them, whether it is with a highlighter, whether it is with copy pasting into a new document with labels, any Word document, or many people make use of an Excel sheet, and sometimes we make use of applications that are specific for coding qualitative research. My recommendation, do not use those if you are only working with a small scope of interviews. So if you have 3 or 4 interviews, up to 7 to 8, those applications that are qualitative, such as NVivo and whatnot, the learning curve is so high on those to the point that you might waste time there rather than actually doing the analysis. especially if you are at a point where you want to be closely in connection with the data. It will be very helpful if you do that analysis in detail. Once the analysis is complete and you have your themes, comes the time for reporting your data. I will be covering this in another presentation, but I'd like to offer a brief overview of things that we make use of in reporting, because as you are conducting your analysis, it will be helpful to know what you are going to do later so that you can put aside things of relevance. One thing we make use of, or one approach that we make use of when we are reporting the analysis, is describing the themes, presenting the story. And as you are identifying your themes, that's why it's very important to keep the descriptions of your themes handy. Next comes the use of visuals, whether they are in the form of a concept map or an organizational chart, or any visual format that might make sense to you. As you are preparing those themes and as you are conducting your analysis, if you put those sketches as you're going, it will be easier for you when you come to report it. Participants' voices are very important through the use of quotes and artifacts. And the most important piece over here is, as you are doing your analysis, completing your analysis, if there is a particular statement given by your participants that is very spot on, very informative, or very striking, and can explain a particular theme, put a note to yourself, highlight it, because it can be used later on. I found it, and we've all done this, I found it extremely hard later on when I'm writing the findings. If I haven't identified, or if I haven't placed some reminders or kept my quotes that I will use on the side, it's very hard to go back and sift through all your interviews to decide which quote might be helpful. So keep that in mind. Tables and graphs for the themes and their frequencies may also be used. I'm hopeful that with this as an overview, you are a bit more comfortable with what's coming up next regarding qualitative data analysis. I will be posting another presentation that focuses on qualitative data analysis in practice, taking some actual transcripts and going through the process of analyzing and identifying themes. As always, if you have any particular question or suggestions for other topics, please feel free to reach out. And for the references for this presentation, you can make use of or check those two